Is in the grip of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Teachers are reportedly concerned about the safety measures in schools. According to a survey where they shared their views, the majority of them are not sure whether there will be any changes despite the postponement of the reopening of schools. Apart from fears of contracting the virus, they say they also spend a large part of their school days pleading with learners to adhere to health protocols. To tell us more about this, we've got Malcolm Mooi, who's the vision bearer at an online learning platform called zabuza.net. Good to have you, Malcolm. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Good morning, Leanne. Thank you for having me.
So first off, how did you conduct this survey?
Basically, we used Microsoft Forms, and we sent out the survey to our teacher community. And then we also followed up with several calls. We speak to teachers on a daily basis about what they're experiencing and what support they require of us.
And so talk to us about the amount of teachers that have actually participated in this question, in this questionnaire, this whatever it may be, and obviously putting together this data.
Okay, our community is 20,000, consists of 20,000 members of teachers from across the country. And the survey results is a sample of that database. We usually average between 5 and 10% of respondents.
So we're talking about quite a number of teachers, and this is so giving us a hopefully an accurate understanding of how they're feeling. And, you know, we know from the Department of Basic Education that over 400 educators have lost their lives since the start of the lockdown. It's understandable why your respondents would have these fears. But let's draw from the survey. How are the safety measures in most schools?
I think we have to commend government on all the efforts that they've put in to ensure that schools are safe. When you look at the protocols, the concern from teachers is that learners are not following those protocols. And I think this is where we're sitting between a rock and a hard place in terms of how do you balance the social nature or the human nature of learners in terms of their need to engage with their friends. So teachers are saying that while, you know, government's done everything they can, they still don't feel safe in a sense that, you know, learners form groups, they don't follow social distancing. Even practical things like some learners come to schools, they forget their stationery at home, and so they're borrowing stationery from their colleagues. And I think for me, what was also concerning from the discussions we've had with teachers and the survey results is that learners appear to not have any fear around COVID or contracting it.
And that is worrying because, you know, with this new variant, and as we've been seeing, is that younger people are being infected now and a lot more viciously than previously. So, and this variant was only discovered at the end of last year. So schools haven't even started with this new variant of coronavirus here in South Africa. So I can only imagine that teachers are hoping for more improvements when schools open. Eventually, as the date has been said, around the 15th of February, but who knows, that I imagine is still open to discussion if we don't see these numbers going down. But what are their hopes when they do open?
Before we get into that, I just wanted to say one thing we have to bear in mind, having spoken about the death and the holiday, a lot of teachers, a lot of learners are coming back, a lot of their colleagues are no longer there. So I think what we're going to experience is a lot of trauma, or we could coin it post-traumatic COVID syndrome, where teachers are coming back, learners are coming back, and they emotionally are not equipped to deal with the death and the grieving process that they would need to go through, even before learning starts. At the same time, teachers are optimistic, and I'm very hopeful. Teachers are up to the task in going back. As I mentioned, we speak to teachers on a daily basis. The energy and enthusiasm is there. Teachers definitely want to get back into the classroom. I think when you look at all the learning and teaching time that was lost out last year, teachers want to get back, make up for that. And I think they've learned a lot of lessons and how to cope with COVID. So I think going back into this year, they're much wiser and prepared for what's to come.
Yeah, well, you know, that's a big thing. But and you hope that their learners are a lot wiser too, as you mentioned in your previous answer, that's the worry. How about their fears of contracting the virus, especially those who have comorbidities?
So a whopping 90% of survey respondents expressed that concern, especially with the new variant, the 50Y. when you look at teachers, they're very selfless. And so their primary concern is the safety of their learners and then themselves and their families. And so this is the concern that, with the new variant being highly contagious and affecting younger people as well, despite, again, the best efforts and the protocols, how do you cope with an invisible disease that is mutating and is so unpredictable? It's not consistent in terms of, how it unfolds and affects people.
Mm. One would imagine the challenges. Obviously, there are so many immense challenges facing teachers at this time. But as you mentioned, they spend most of their days pleading with learners to just sit and adhere to protocols. This must also affect the learning, and it must also affect how much of the syllabus that they can actually get through after getting everybody to calm down, wear their social distancing, wear masks, not share stationery, all of this stuff. And then, of course, it's the added constraint that, there are classes that are on and then off and then on and off. So, how is the actual syllabus being impacted from their side?
That is a big concern from a lot of teachers that we speak to, is that, and I'm sure everybody can appreciate, especially parents, what goes into teaching with, parents having to take on learning coordinators at home. And so you're quite correct. Teachers are saying the amount of time it takes just, to get learners to settle down and to focus. A lot of teachers tell us it's not conducive to teaching. You look at some of the rotation and platooning systems that are put into place. Teachers are fatigued. They're having to teach lessons 3-4 times a day in a repetitive nature. And I think learners also, as I mentioned earlier, the big psychological and emotional effect on them, a lot of them will come back into this new school having lost a parent, having lost a friend. And how do we cope with that emotional trauma before we can even get to the academic side of things?
Yeah, and let's stop there for a moment, because the emotional support is such a big thing, not only for learners, but for teachers as well. Do they feel that they are getting that emotional support? It's one thing begging for PPE and begging for all of the things that, will help protect you from this virus. But the emotional support, is that being offered in any way that you know of?
I do know. I know government has started to run workshops with teachers, specifically around emotional well-being. I do know I work with a lot of organizations as well that's involved in that space. You're seeing a lot of those professionals come to the fore now, offering their services and support. But again, as in 2020, we all caught off guard. And so I think we're waking up to this realization that actually, before this learner can learn, we need to get them into a state that is conducive of learning. And so I think the big factor is scale. When you look at the magnitude of basic education, 437,000 plus teachers, spread across the 9 countries, 27,000 schools, 13 million learners. And so I don't think it's a question about not doing anything. It's about how do we do this on scale? How do we ensure consistency across, all 27,000 schools?
Yeah. So just as we wrap up, the wish list of demands from the department, what are teachers really hoping improves? What are they asking for?
I think it's the consistency. I think, like they say, we can commend government on everything they are doing, but when you go from province to province or different quintile type schools, is there that consistency across the board? We've seen situations around PPE last year, just around the logistical nightmare of ensuring that PPE gets to schools. And so I think it is that, consistency that we're asking from government. And I think there's also, an empathy towards it, understanding the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with. And to quote one of the teachers saying, we're sitting in this situation where on the one hand, we're dealing with the health and safety of ourselves and our learners. And on the other hand, it's the educational needs. And if you look at the impact of that, some research has indicated that this will set back generations if learning is continued to be disrupted in this manner.
All right, we'll leave it there, Malcolm. We wish you and your colleagues the best over this time. We really do, because believe me, from someone that's doing homeschooling and online learning for my little ones, it is a blessing and a calling to be a teacher, but it takes a lot of patience. It absolutely does. So good on all of you. Good on you. Vision bearer at online learning platform. Sabuza.net, thanks for talking to us. That was that survey they conducted where basically teachers were sharing their concerns and fears about COVID-19 safety measures in schools, and the biggest thing they're asking for is consistency around the country and the provinces at all schools to ensure their safety.